podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. Okay, welcome to episode 100 of the 1905 podcast. And, well, it's not the episode 100 we were planning. It's an emergency pod to talk about the news that dropped a few hours ago that Enzo Maresca has left Chelsea. And Joe and I are doing this one in person. Joe, I'll start with the obvious question. Where were you when you found out the news that he'd gone? And I guess what was your immediate feeling and emotion about it?
Yes, hello, good evening all. Strange. Yes, never a dull day at Chelsea, is there? Never a dull day. I think where was I? I was getting up. I'd had a long evening and a few drinks, and I was a little bit hungover this morning, being New Year's, and I wasn't surprised. I don't know why. You got a feeling after the Bournemouth game that all wasn't well. The fact that Maresca didn't do his press conference, and just one or two things you hear from certain people. We know a few people inside the club, and yeah, it just felt like maybe all wasn't well. I'll be honest, I didn't expect him to be sacked on New Year's Day. I didn't see that coming at all. I'm not sure that's ever happened, is it? To a new manager. But yeah, I'm not, as I said in my podcast a couple of times ago, I'm not terribly disappointed. But equally, I do feel as though changing a manager doesn't always work immediately for you. And whoever they appoint, who we'll come on to in a minute, there's got to be a bit of long-term planning, not just for the next 6 months.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I think with any managerial sacking or departure, whatever you want to call it, it's all about what happens next, isn't it? It really is. It's like you can say, we'll start this pod talking about Maresca. That'll be part one, and I guess what went wrong and how we'll remember him, and then we'll talk about where Chelsea go next, and obviously the talk coming out from the club is that it won't be an interim appointment, it will be a full-time hire. So that is expected to happen in the next few days, and we'll talk about, I guess, who we'd like to see in that position and who we wouldn't like to see. Let's talk about Maresca then, which we've talked about a lot. Obviously, in the last podcast after that Bournemouth game, I put my cards down on the table and said that for me, it was now time for a change. But why did we get to that point? Joe, I'll put it to you first. It has really been a roller coaster, hasn't it, for the last 18 months or so, I guess, with Maresca. It's never felt secure, even when you've had these little spells where we'd sort of start to really warm, and then it always felt like, just as you had that feeling, we obviously had it last season when we started so well and were doing really well right up to Christmas, and then it fell off a cliff. And then it happened exactly the same again, where you have the real high of that Barcelona win, and then a really good adult grown-up performance, I think we called it, like showed that we really got a team with balls against Arsenal. And then it's almost like a collapse. So where do you sit in terms of kind of what went wrong from where you sit?
I don't know. I don't think the players are 100% bought into him. It's just a feeling I have. I'm not saying that none of them didn't like him or that sort of thing. You get the impression that people like Cole Palmer, the little moments. So, for example, against against Aston Villa, when he throws his arms up in the air, sort of a bit of a displeasure to sort of say, we're trying to win a game of football. We're fourth in the league, looking to close the gap on Aston Villa. I'm feeling fine. Leave me out there. And those little things make me think as a supporter, all is not well within the camp. Because if you've got a manager who is fully respected, put it this way, nobody's doing that to Didier Drogba. To Jose Mourinho. Drogba's not going to look at Mourinho and go, I'm not coming off. Lampard's not going to throw his hand and say, I'm not coming off. If you respect the guy in charge, then for me, those things are never a thing. The fact that you see this, it's not the first time we've seen it from Palmer either. He's done this before. You just get the feeling that behind the scenes, I'm not saying there's player power involved at all, because This isn't Lampard tearing Drogba from the past. This is a younger team, which we keep going on about. But there just has a sense of there's a slight lack of respect for him. And maybe within the club, the players hear things as well. And if they're feeling that he's not prepared to commit to them and to the club going forward long term, maybe they're thinking, do you know what, mate? Why should I respect you if you don't respect us? Because there's lots of talk today that maybe he's kind of engineered this move out of the club to potentially get another job either in Italy, or I know people are going to laugh because they think Man City wouldn't go for him, but maybe when the Man City job comes up in the summer, he could be a very good candidate for that, and he wants to put himself in a position, and he can't do that if he's at Chelsea.
Yeah, that seems to be the strong rumour, doesn't it? That he obviously got his new agent with Jorge Mendes being strongly linked to both Juventus and Man City, that something's happened something's happening in the background there. It came out that he even told the club that he has spoken to people at City about if there was a vacancy in the future that he'd like to be considered. And if you're Chelsea, actually in fairness to the club, they are right to say, well, you're not 100% committed then to this club. And, you know, in any walk of life, football or any position, Chelsea is not, you know, a Mickey Mouse club where we expect to lose our managers to another club. Let's be fair. We don't expect that. What I wanted to do, and I don't want this to take too long, but I think this is worth doing, is having a little bit of a review of this season and our results, and probably more importantly, actually, the performances. So what I've noticed, I think, in the media today, and perhaps from sort of friends messaging me as well, is that everyone's a bit like, oh, Chelsea are at it again. Chelsea getting rid of the manager for no good reason. So a little bit, but I think he's getting some good PR. It's sort of like Paul Maresca. He'll end up at, like we just said, he'll end up at a big club next, and watch how well he does. And we watch every single Chelsea game, as I'm sure many listeners do as well. And perhaps we see a little bit more of the reality of the performances behind some of the results. So I want to wind our minds back right to the start of the season, off the back of a very, very short pre-season where we just played those 2 games in 2 days against Leverkusen and AC Milan. And I think we're all really buoyant about what this team would look like, particularly that 4-1 win against Milan, where we looked, actually in both games, we looked really good, didn't we? We're flying forward. Joe, you and I sat together for the Palace game, first game of the season. We drew 0-0. And I think we came out of that going, okay, that was bad. We were lucky not to lose the game when Eze's disallowed goal from VAR. And it was a inauspicious start, I guess. Then we had the game at West Ham, which we won 5-1. Obviously, what you then since understand is that it was a terrible West Ham side. Obviously, they were in big trouble themselves, and under Potter, who'd be sacked not long after. And then we followed that with a win against Fulham at home 2-0, which again was lucky. You had a really poor start, the Fulham goal disallowed by VAR. It all felt a bit shaky. And then we finished before the finish of this little run of fixtures with that 2-2 draw at Brentford, where we conceded the first of what would be many goals from long throws in the last minute of the game. And actually, I realised this earlier, it's almost exactly the same goal as the Bournemouth goal, because they score around the back post with Garnacho not tracking his man. It's almost an absolute carbon copy. But in this run of fixtures, and then we had the Champions League game against Bayern Munich, which we lost 3-1. But through the course of that start, we got a couple of wins in there, a couple of draws, but it just wasn't very good, was it? And then the next game, by the way, was the Man United defeat, which was obviously a disaster, actually, with Maresca at the heart of that. And then a week later, we lost at home to Brighton, with again Maresca making some crazy decisions with us down to 10 men. So you got that little form at the start of the season, and what it told me looking back is that the sporting directors get a lot of stick, and for some of the squad management and the stuff that we've talked about a lot on this podcast about the gaps in the squad and where we should be improving. But there's no question in my mind that he, as a manager, a top Chelsea manager, would be getting more out of that group of players. And as I said in the last pod, more than anything, be a more enjoyable team to watch. And I wanted to put that to you, Joe. Like, have you enjoyed watching this Maresca Chelsea over the course of the last season and a half?
I think I've been quite vocal on that in my voice notes, where I've said he has games where he's very, very good. And we can point to the most recent ones. They're very easy because it's fresh in memory. Barcelona and Arsenal. Okay, the Arsenal game was different because we had a man sent off, but you rightly said at the start of the podcast it was a grown-up performance, and we thought, oh, here we go. They're a very good team, Arsenal, the best team in the league right now. We went toe-to-toe with them with 10 men and probably should have won, if we're honest with you. The game before that, we had Barcelona. Okay, this isn't the Barcelona of the past, but still a very good team with full of world-class players, internationals, etc. They play a certain way, which always scares you to death. And we won 3-0. And he thought, well, fantastic. But like you said there, going back to the start of the season, and there's probably other games that you failed to throw in, in your little speech there, where you've gone, it's drab. It's really, really drab. And yes, there were times where we got results. I mean, the Palace, okay, let's just throw it back to the start of the season. The Palace game was awful. I mean, it was so bad. We had one shot at goal, I believe, which was the lap in the 86th minute, and it went about 20 yards wide. We didn't have a shot other than that in the whole game. You spoke about West Ham. Okay, it was a good win in terms of result, but West Ham had plenty of chances in the second half, even at 5-1, to make that game 5-3, possibly even 5-4. And you could argue they were quite good chances. But, on the day, we win 5-1. And then the Fulham game, we were as bad probably as we were against Crystal Palace. We've been brutally honest. Fulham ran us ragged. They had their goal disallowed, obviously, for VAR in the first half, which, let's be fair, probably shouldn't have been given. So you could have gone in 1-0 down there, and the whole game's different if João Pedro doesn't score with the last kick of the game in the first half. So, yeah, we do tend to find ourselves in this mucky water where we sort of we tend to get results now and again, but without playing very well. And there are moments where you go, but against a good team, we're going to come unstuck. And then against a good team, he wins very well. And you go, well, what's going on here? I can't put the 2 and 2 together. But then, like you say, you have runs like you have now, Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, all the teams I always talk about always seem to get results against us. And we're Chelsea Football Club. We cannot continue to keep getting beat and drop points against these sides. They're not good. They're not as good as us. They haven't got the resources that we've got. And for some reason, they keep getting the upper hand on us, and it's driving me insane.
I think that's it. I think there's so many games that when I look through the results this season and kind of go back to remembering the game itself, Lincoln away where we won early in the season, we were terrible. Do you remember? It was one of the worst Chelsea performances in that first half, particularly that I remember. But we came through and won, so you move on. Chelsea against Benfica, we won 1-0 with Mourinho. Quite lucky to win that game. It was a drab affair. Even at Forest away, we won 3-0. The last game of Ange is run there. Do you remember how badly we started? Really lucky not to be behind at the break. You end up with a really good second half and we come through. But again, how Forest didn't score a couple at the end, you'll never know. Wolves away in the League Cup, we won 4-3. Play another 10 minutes of that, we'd have lost it, 5-4. It was that feels so. Even in these runs of good wins, I don't think the performances were there. And I think if we're being honest, and I think it's probably what the club have looked at, they've gone, well, actually, as long as you're winning games, you're not worrying too much about that. But actually look at it as a body of work over the course of the season. It's not been great. And then you throw in, obviously, some of those really disappointing results that have actually cost us now, like Qarabag away in the Champions League, which I know you were like really angry about, Joe, that the result there, getting a 2-2 away at Qarabag, and obviously losing then at Atalanta in the Champions League as well, which has effectively meant that Chelsea will have not been able to get top 8 in automatic qualification. Those things, when you're looking at Maresca this season, will without a doubt be a big impact on the decision. And the fact of the matter is, having invested as Chelsea have in the squad, probably where we thought we'd go from how we finished last season and how we did in the summer, they'll be looking at the fact that we are in that bubble of teams around. I think the stat came out today, didn't it, that we're closer to 15th than we are 3rd now in the league. And the couple of results go the wrong way in the next few weeks, and it could get really quite ugly. So, yeah, I think that was kind of one of the things that I've been reflecting on today, just thinking about the season as a whole and how we've gone and gone. It hasn't been great. We've had little moments, like you said, with those performances, but I think as a whole, having watched us play, I'm like, it's not been great. And I can tell you the sort of sentiment that we get from Chelsea fans that I've been speaking to, and I often mention our WhatsApp group because it's always popping with messages, and it has been today. I think generally people are quite happy, and particularly those fans who have really bemoaned the style of football under Enzo. I think they're the ones particularly like, do you know what, I'm relieved not to have to continue watching that football. Now, of course, what comes next will be incredibly important. We'll talk about that later. But
I don't know who's put it out there, but he has said that the sporting directors are in his ear about the rotation of his team. And I think that's my biggest bugbear. I think it's one of your biggest bugbears is how often we rotate our players. I think we are the first for this or second for this, either ahead of Wolves or behind Wolves for making the most changes to our team. I think it's 55 different team selections or something he's done in the time that he's been there, which is incredible, when you think about it. Yes, it's a squad game. We know all that. But you go back to Liverpool and go back to City and Arsenal. How often do Arsenal change their team, really? They might make a change here for an injury or potentially someone's having a bit of a burnout, so they come out for a game or two. But like we said before, the goal giver doesn't change. The two centre halves don't change. The fullbacks don't change if they're fit. Declan Rice plays every week, etc. These things remain the same, and that is why they get good results every single week. If you can continue to keep rotating that squad every single week, and it is every single week, it's every single game, there's 3 or 4 changes, and sometimes way more than that. Okay, you can understand for a cup game, he might go 9, 10 changes. But even then, Jose or Tuchel, they'd always have Terry would play, Lampard would play. He'd have his staple men in there that he could trust and go, no, you're playing today. I don't care. You're playing. If we're winning, you'll come off. But he always trusted them to get the job done. I think my biggest annoyance is that if the sporting directors have got a job where they say to the manager, you need to keep rotating these players in. So Tosin needs to have minutes. Buddy Shield needs to have minutes. Gusto needs his minutes. Or we haven't seen, let's say, Jamie Gittins has had 2 games where he's only played 5 minutes, so he needs to start today. That should not and ever be allowed. And if we as a football club are allowing that to happen, I'm sorry, it's a disgrace. The manager has to have the final word on who he sees as the best fit, and for the you might be playing a team where he thinks, you know what, today Gittins has got more pace than whoever. I'm going to play him, or that guy doesn't like going down. If you're playing against a fullback, say, that doesn't like one-on-one defending, all right, I'm going to play that player today because I think he's the best player to get at him. He should not be told, oh, just because this guy needs a few more minutes today, play him instead. That, for me, is an utter disgrace. And I hope to God that isn't the case. But I feel in my bones that behind the scenes, he was getting messages of that type of thing. Maybe worded slightly differently, but there was interference from outside. And my concern is, and I'm not going to go into the managers right now, but if, for example, Liam Rosenior was to walk in the door tomorrow as our new manager, I don't see that changing. And I see us making the same mistakes where we go every single week, 3 or 4 changes, 2 centre halves change, the fullbacks change, the centre halves, the centre forward changes every week, and we don't get any form of consistency. And I worry that we're going to go down the same path as we've just done with Maresca. And this next managerial appointment for me is going to tell me everything about what this football club wants to be and wants to be going forward.
It's huge, isn't it? It's absolutely huge. Let's talk about that next then. A final word on Maresca. How will you remember his times? I'll go first and say a roller coaster. I will remember. I think I'll look back fondly on that summer, watching Chelsea in the Club World Cup. It was a real novelty to watch Chelsea play a tournament in that time of year, games at weird kickoff times. I'll never forget staying up until the crazy hours because of that thunderstorm, as we came back after extra time to beat Benfica, wasn't it? And then obviously that amazing night when we beat PSG. I think I'll look back on that. I'll remember him getting us back into the Champions League, which was so important. I think those will be the positives, and I think the negatives will be probably the warning that we were given by Henry Rowley, who was as a guest on our first ever podcast, our first ever episode, which was kind of actually timely, wasn't it? That our first episode was the appointment of Maresca, and our 100th was about his sacking. But Henry's a big Leicester fan, and he kind of gave us the warning that Leicester fans didn't love his style of football. And by the end of his tenure of that season, despite him having won the league and got Leicester back into the Premier League, that they were actually quite kind of okay to see him leave. And that's probably where I am right at this moment in time. What about you, Joe? What are your memories?
Memories, yeah, I think very similar to you. And, you know, the fact that he won the Club World Cup, and yeah, that gets kind of ridiculed at times by certain fans and what have you, but he still had to do it. He still had to go and get that thing. He delivered what he set out to do, which is, you know, win the thing. There were moments, there were games I really enjoyed, but I think overall, it probably is the right time for him to go, because I feel as though if we're going to start afresh, there's no point in starting afresh in 3 months' time when we're out of everything. At least at this stage, we've got a chance to come back and actually maybe get that full position or potentially win a cup. I'm very meh on him. Like I said to you the other day, I'm not disappointed he's gone. At the same time, I think we could find ourselves in a worse position in 3 months if we're not careful. I've seen this happen before, where we think we're getting a new shiny thing, and before you know it, you think actually Maresca wasn't that bad, was he? Yeah, I think Scolari, I preferred him more than him. Preferred him more than Villas-Boas, more than Sarri. I preferred him more than him. But clearly, he's never going to be a Chelsea legend. He's never going down with the likes of even of Vialli. Like, Vialli played great football, and even though he was only really pretty much an interim manager, he wasn't, but he kind of was. Obviously, Mourinho, Tuchel, Conte. He's never going to be in that bracket of manager. Ancelotti, let's not forget him. But I think I'm okay with it. I don't feel too disappointed, like I said the other day. But equally, I am trepidatious that we might have. We're not made a bad decision, but I feel as though we might not be thinking this is all as good in 3 or 4 months' time. But we'll see.
Let's talk about who comes next after this break. Okay. I think the first thing to say about who comes next is that, as you alluded to there, Joe, just before the break, there is still a lot to play for this season. And I think that Chelsea fans, more than, let's be fair, probably any other fans in the world, know that changing a manager mid-season can actually lead to pretty big things. And Chelsea have won the Champions League twice in making a manager change around this kind of time. So we know better than anyone. And as it stands, Chelsea are in the semi-final of the League Cup, are 5th in the Premier League, still in the Champions League, and obviously yet to play in the FA Cup. So everything is still there to be played for. I certainly am not of the mentality of writing this season off, like you said there, Joe. I agree, and thinking this is over. There's still plenty to go for, and I think that's why Chelsea are very much looking to make a permanent appointment. Before we start looking at the names and the people currently in the front running for the job, I'll throw this to you, Joe. What kind of manager do you want, and what don't you want? And I guess you can take that question any way you want, but what kind of things are you looking for, whether that be in style of football, the way the team's set up? What are the improvements that you'll be like, right, yes, this is much more like it?
Well, if we go back to when Tuchel was appointed, we were in a very similar position where it was a bit up and down. You know, Frank had a okay time of it. When you look back, Frank's results weren't that bad, but he obviously got the boot from Roman. Tuchel come in, but what he did do was he shut the door. He shut the door completely. We had a lot of 1-0s. We had a couple of 0-0s, etc. at the start. And we were like, oh, but he got results, and we could build off of a clean sheet. I always say to you and Andy, our good friend, I was saying that you can always win if you keep a clean sheet. You know, if you lose, if you concede the first goal, very good chance you lose 1-0. And when I was a kid, that was always sort of drummed into me. So clean sheet, someone that can come in and actually say, because what the hell is going on with these set pieces at the moment? I just don't know. Trev, Fofana, Badiashile, Tosin, none of them can win the first ball. So we're losing the first ball every single time. And obviously that reacts to the second one, which is like the Bournemouth goal, the second goal, the Justin Kluivert goal the other day. We keep seeing that. And even if the team doesn't score, they create a good chance from it. And it's almost like panic stations every time the ball goes in the box. So someone that can come in and sort that out for a start. Secondly, I want to see, personally, a counter-attacking manager. We are very, very good at soaking up pressure and hitting teams on the break fast. We've got the players to do it. We've got masses of pace in this team, particularly in the wide areas. And I don't think we utilise it. And when we do utilise it, we look brilliant. That's my personal opinion. I don't see us as a team that can control a game for 90 minutes like Barcelona's best team, with all them fantastic midfield players, and is a really good, fun, exciting young team. And what do young players like to do? Can you remember being 21, 20 and having that feeling of I can go past anybody, I can beat anybody, and with the challenge of I'm going to take my man on and nutmeg him and do whatever. Esteval, Neto, Palmer, etc. These players are born, Garnacho, they're born to do that. And I think that being asked to play a more pragmatic, slower pace of play, let's get it, let's have 14 passes when 2 will do approach, I don't think suits us. And again, we go back to a goal that we scored against PSG in the World Club Cup, because it's such an iconic goal, actually, when I think Sanchez rolls the ball into, it's either Levo Colwell or Caicedo, gets played back to him, and the PSG players think we're going to go short again. He takes one touch, he pinged it to Gusto, he wins the header, and the rest is history. One pass, and we were in their half. Now, I'm not saying that we should play long ball all the time, but the way we can do that, and we have a goalkeeper who has got very, very good passing skills and long passing skills at that. We never utilise him enough. I just think I want to see a manager that is prepared to soak up a little bit of possession, soak up a little bit of pressure, and then hit teams quickly on their counter-attack. We did it actually against Villa when we were there the other day, Chris, where we came for that. We left players up front. Sanchez made a couple of great claims from a corner, rolled it into midfield players, and 2 passes, and we were in the other areas, other teams' box. And I think that we could do that a lot more. I don't want to see, personally, I don't want to see a manager that's going to come in and just play tiki-taka, because I don't think we've got the players to do it.
I mean, I'm completely with you. And I think that, for me, the number one job of the new manager is to get the best out of Cole Palmer and get him banging back to his best. And we haven't really seen that now for about 12 months. So and this is not me saying Cole hasn't been great, but if you look at the point, in the last 12 months, he's had moments of absolute genius, like the PSG game, of course, and others. But I think generally, Maresca hasn't been able to get the best out of him. And I think you've seen quite a frustrated-looking Cole Palmer at times.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your flow there, Chris. But just on the Cole Palmer thing, do you think he looks injured? Or do you think he looks uninterested at the moment? Because I think he looks uninterested, personally.
Yeah. I would go with that. I thought that there's a really good clip of him that went around. I saw it in the last couple of days, of him when he was subbed off against Bournemouth, and Chelsea win a corner as he's walking around the pitch. He has to walk around the back of the shed end. Esteval hits a good shot. It's a good save. Goes out for a corner, and Palmer sort of jokingly runs up as if he's going to take the corner short, but knowing he's obviously been taken off. He has quite a funny moment with the fans, and actually it shows Cole Palmer's personality. But there was almost an element of that, was like gallows humour, of him being like, it's actually ridiculous, I can't be on the pitch to take the corner. And I mentioned, didn't I, earlier today, that, do you remember the game? Well, obviously everyone remember the game, the Conference League final, Chelsea losing 1-0 to Real Betis, actually not looking like we're doing anything with half an hour to go. It really felt like that game was, and the trophy was going to get away from us, which would have been nothing but a disaster for Chelsea and Maresca. Cole Palmer then takes the game into his own hands and produces a couple of just absolutely outrageous assists, doesn't he? One for Enzo Fernandez and then for Nicholas Jackson. Gets man of the match, and after the game, everyone says, "Oh, Palmer, what did you do? Tell us." And he basically just said, I ignored the game plan and just did it my way. And I thought that was telling. And I think at the time you thought, oh, that's a bit cheeky, but you kind of move on. But you sort of think, yeah, how much is he not being able to sort of express himself as much as he'd like to in what is a very system sort of football? And so for me, that would be major. And you almost put Esteval into that conversation as well. To watch those two again, we've been crying out for it, haven't we? And you could just tell in that hour that they played together against Bournemouth that those two, again, were linking up so many times, have got a clear chemistry. And that's just having played together, a couple of games, including friendlies. It's really no time. So for me, getting the best out of those guys, that's where you could take this club, isn't it? If you're building like the future of the club, you'd be like, well, put it on those guys' shoulders. In the same way that if you've got an Erling Haaland or a Yamal at at Barca. You're going, right, that's the guy to build around. You've got it in Palmer and Estevao, so go and do it. And I want to see a manager come in that has a tactical flexibility, not a system that I always play, like I said about Maresca, but comes in and goes, well, actually, these are my key players. These are the 4 or 5 that have to play every week. Like you mentioned about that Chelsea era of old. You put Casado into the mix, he's going to play. I'm going to get Reece James playing here. Like, what happens to Reece now? Is he back as a regular right back, or is he a centre midfielder? That'll be an interesting thing to watch. It's all those kind of, I think, questions, but that's really what I want to see. And I've always said, we said it about Sarri, we said it that would be a concern with Maresca, is that certain types of managers suit certain types of club. And the Chelsea DNA has always been that we've resisted this kind of possession for possession's sake side of football. And you see it at Stamford Bridge. It's never gone down well. It's the reason why Maresca's never had the love at Stamford Bridge from the fan base, if I'm being honest, is that style of football. And I think a manager who comes in and tries to do that is going to struggle from minute one, whoever they are. So, yeah, I'm looking for that, I think.
So do you think then, let's just say the worst happens, right? Just say we finish 6th or 7th, one for the kids there, 6th or 7th or 8th. Let's just say, what's the Conference League position? Is it 7 or is it 8? Do you know, off the top of your head? I think it's
It'll be
around
7th, I think, yeah.
Right.
Top
just
5
to
is
say,
probably Champions League, yeah.
Can you imagine, let's say top 4, we don't get top 4, and we end up in those Europa League, God forbid, Conference League position. I can't imagine Cole Palmer sitting here next season going, I want to be there. I feel as though, not saying he'd throw his toys out the pram, but why does he want to go and play the Conference League again? And I'm actually scared as a fan, thinking, what happens if that happens? Because I don't even want to bear to think about it. Obviously, financially, we can go into all the rigmarole around that about Chelsea needing to sell players before they can buy players and things. But we know the Conference League is absolute rubbish. And if we end up in the Europa League, that's sort of one thing. But missing out on those things altogether could be horrendous. And like you say, there's a few teams below us who've got a game in hand, and this is just at the moment, of course. But if they win, they either go a point above us or a point behind us. And Spurs, if they win their game in hand, go 2 points behind us, and they were miles behind weeks ago. And you go, we've now made this thing where we've let everybody come back on top of us, where you know that one loss or one draw could put you down 3 or 4 positions. And I was thinking this earlier on, though. Cole Palmer isn't Chelsea Football Club. If in a year or two that guy wants to move on because we aren't providing him what he needs, then Chelsea need to go and get the biggest amount of money they can for him, and obviously and move on. Now, I don't want to see that happen, of course, but I just I think you look at Zola, you look at Hazard, you look at Palmer. Everyone thinks that you can never replace these players, and then in a 2 or 3 year period, you can find somebody. There's always someone out there. Chelsea as a club are always going to be bigger than an individual, whether that be John Terry or Drogba or anybody else. But equally, you want to see players like Cole Palmer in your team. That's why we pay our money. That's why we pay our subscriptions to Sky Sports and TNT and dodgy sticks and whatever. And it's that thing that we can afford to lose him, because obviously the club will never die. But at the same time, if you want excitement and if you want someone to go and win you a match, as someone that you can go, do you know what, today you're sitting with your son or your daughter and you go, oh, Palmer's playing today. You can get right behind that from the start. I sit with my son, I say Palmer's playing, straight away he's like, yes. That's what you're gonna miss, and that's what you're gonna lose if you keep going down this road of mediocrity. So the fact that Maresca's gone, I don't think he was getting the best out of him. I don't think Palmer really liked him personally, like as a manager, not so as a person. And I just feel as though there'll be a few players in that dressing room tonight and today that we're thinking, okay, that's not the end of the world. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the club will. I think that first and foremost, it doesn't bear thinking about that Chelsea could end up in Conference League or worse. And I think that's the reason, a big part of the reason I imagine that the club have made the decision now to stop the rot before it's not too late. 100%. We've got a lot of games coming up in January, a crazy number of fixtures, and Chelsea want to make sure that we don't leave ourselves in a really bad position. And I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Cole Palmer's such a big player now in the world. He's one of the few players that my daughter, who's got no interest in football, knows. She'd be like, all of her playground, like, no Cole Palmer. And I think Chelsea will look at him as like, he should be the face of the club for the next 10 years. And in any manager interviews that they'd be doing, they'd be like, right, what would be your plan to get the best out of our key players? And they want to see what the plan is for Palmer and Esteban and people like that. Would be what I would imagine would be part of that conversation. So let's talk about the names then. And I've got a list here from I've got a couple of betting sites up, and the betting sites are always a good place to start. But you've also got the names being talked about by the journalists. I'll give you the top sort of 6-7 names, and then Joe, I'll put it over to you, and you can maybe just pick out a couple that you think that kind of give you that spidey sense that you'd be excited to see them appointed, and maybe the one or two that certainly wouldn't. The top favourite and teaser at the time of recording, the name that has just come through on Twitter from, I think, David Ornstein saying that he is the one to watch, is Liam Rosenior from Strasbourg. Obviously a Blue Co boy, has done a great job at Strasbourg and previously was at Hull. He's the top favourite, odds on it at 3 to 10. I'm looking at William Hill here. Number 2 favourite is Cesc Fabregas, who I put my case forward for on the last pod. Number 3 is Filipe Luís, ex-Chelsea player, of course, doing an amazing job at Flamengo. Then you've got Francesco Farioli, who I believe is the Porto manager, at 11 to 1. Andoni Areola, who is the Bournemouth manager, right? Xavi Hernandez, former Barcelona legend and manager, at 14 to 1, and Oliver Glasner, Palace manager, at 14 to 1, who the rumours come out that he won't be leaving Palace now, but again, money talks, doesn't it? So out of those names, Joe, let's start with, give us a couple that you kind of go, that would be the sort of direction I'd be excited by, and a couple that you would be more concerned about.
I was half expecting you to put my name on the list there. I mean, it's not fantastic, is it?
You're 25 to 1.
For goodness me, I wouldn't mind a pound on myself. Let's start with Xavi, because I think there's quite a few people that are thinking maybe he's got the credentials. Obviously, he was a fantastic player. There's no getting away from it. But I wouldn't want to see his style of football. I think he'll be very much like Maresca. I think it'll be pass. And I think we'll have some good results. What I would say with him is he's done everything in the game. He's won everything there is to win multiple times. So you couldn't argue with that guy and say, you don't know what you're talking about. He can tell you how to play a pass and all the rest of it. But I just feel that he would become a problem for the owners. I think he fell out with the previous owners at Barcelona. I don't see him being a great fit for us personally. The one name that I do like is that Filipe Luís. I feel as though there's a lot of South Americans in our team at the moment, a lot of South Americans. And I don't think we're probably finished in buying in that area of the field. I think he would get a shit ton out of, name your player, Esteval, Enzo Fernandez, etc., Garnacho. I think he would really get a lot. João Pedro. He excites me a little bit. I think he's got a steely determination. And even though when he was at Chelsea, he was only there a year, I think, and he was moved on. He had a very good career. He's a good player. And I think he would be someone that might be a bit more counter-attacking, a bit more Simeone than the other ones, in the sense that I think he would be prepared to soak up a bit of crap and then just throw everyone forward on the counter-attack. So he excites me a little bit. Liam Rosenior, he's favourite everywhere you look. Now, he's an easy favourite because he's the Blue Co man and he's at Strasbourg. So everyone thinks he's just going to walk in the door. Now, my concern is if he gets appointed tomorrow or the next day, I think the fan base are going to go mad. I think the fan base are going to go absolutely mental. I do not see Liam Rosenior, and I hope, if he is appointed, I wish him all the best. But he's going to have such a short leash on all of our next remaining fixtures that if he gets a single draw or he puts out a poor team against so-and-so and they don't win, it's going to be like, it's just Maresca number 2. He's a yes man. It's just going to be this constant thing thrown at him. I don't think he's going to get a fair crack at the whip. I think they'd be better off leaving him at Strasbourg, let him develop. If he's a good coach, if he can go and win League 1 in the next year or two with that Strasbourg team, then fair play. Like, that would be a real achievement to beat PSG. But to come in now as a Chelsea manager, having managed Hull and Strasbourg for a year and a half, or whatever it is, to be the new Chelsea manager, how the hell have we got to that stage? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. That cannot happen. I'm sorry. If Liam Rosenior becomes the new Chelsea manager, I think it's a disgrace. And I think that's what I said earlier on about where the club's going. I think the sporting directors and the owners want a yes man, and they'll be like, oh yeah, whatever we say he'll do because he's got no power. You know, an experienced manager coming in who's been around the block, someone like Unai Emery, let's just say, who's not on that list, and of course wouldn't leave Aston Villa. They're doing really, really well. But someone like him would not take their bullshit. And I think that if Rosenior ends up becoming our manager, I think that's going to be a real red flag for me. And I can see it going horribly wrong really, really fast. And I think the fans are going to start getting the hump with the owners more so than the manager. And I think they'd be better off sticking in a the biggest they can find, experienced manager, and let him get the hell on with the job. But I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I think that's it for me with Liam Rosenior, is that if Chelsea, if the club are listening, and they have listened to podcasts in the past, so if you are, this would be my one warning with him, is that he, I think, very well could be a very good manager, but you'd almost be creating such a big problem for yourselves. In the same way, I think that Graham Potter didn't win the Chelsea fans around immediately, and then as soon as it went wrong, it was really toxic, actually. And then, like you said, it makes it toxic for the owners. I think that you'd have exactly the same position with Liam Rosenior. And actually, I think he comes across, I've seen him interviewed, it seems like a really good guy, really engaged football guy. But let him come into the conversation, as you say, when he's won some stuff at Strasbourg, when he's got that kind of CV where you're like, wow, you did that. That's amazing. You go and win the Conference League this year at Strasbourg. Go and get into the Champions League with Strasbourg through the league in the French league. Go and beat PSG in a French Cup final, do those kind of things, like you said, Joe, and then let's have a conversation about him, because actually I think at that point he'll come in and the Chelsea fan perspective would be very, very different. I think the club would actually be making their own personal lives very difficult if they made that appointment, because for all the reasons you said there, Joe, I think it would be, oh, he's a yes man, you're doing that because he's part of the Blue Coat, and whoever comes into Strasbourg next is immediately going to be seen as like a future Chelsea manager, which just creates problems at that club as well. So he would be the one on the list out of everyone that I'd be most concerned about. I'll put it out there now, and he's the favourite, so that is a worry. I really like Fabregas, and I won't go back into that, but I think that Cesc is doing a great job at Como, and I think for the opposite reasons of Liam Rosenior, I think Chelsea fans would be really excited by him. I think that he is destined for a very, very good managerial career at the top of the game, and I think it will be one of Barcelona, Arsenal, or Chelsea that he probably ends up at. And so by getting in there early, you are going early on him, but I think he's got a pragmatism, would come in and would certainly immediately fire those Chelsea fans up, which I think would be a big win. And I like Filipe Luís as well. Nothing to add from what you said there, Joe, but he's done an amazing job at Flamengo, and he'd be exciting. And I do quite like Glasner at Palace, just maybe because I know so many Palace fans who think he's the Messiah, and he's done such a good job with limited resources there. But of course, the question with him would be a little bit like Thomas Frank is finding it at Spurs. It's a very different job going into a Palace and making them a really difficult team to beat, and doing what you've done to going into Chelsea and having to then be on the front foot. So maybe he's more of a risk. But I think of that list, the two that excite me the most are Fabregas and Luís, who would be young guys, but who have got that Chelsea background that I think would give they'd get a little bit more leash from the Chelsea fans, and I think they'd get more the more credit from the board with an appointment like that, to be a bit future thinking, showing that you understand the Chelsea DNA, those kind of things, than a Rosenior would.
I worry about Cesc a little bit. Not that I don't think he's a good manager, or not that I don't think he could be a good manager, and any of that reason. I worry that he's a bit Frank Lampard, new into the job, gets thrown into the Chelsea job, does really well for a couple of months, and then has that sticky period, and then the labels like Solskjaer got, oh, he's not experienced enough. He's only ever managed in Norway or whatever. Oh, he's not good enough. And before you know it, that guy that could have developed at Como and maybe won something or got close to winning something with a very small budget, in a few years' time he rounds himself off a little bit, and you go, oh, that guy's really, really good. Opposed to all clubs do this, by the way. When Liverpool were looking for their next manager and stuff, obviously Real Madrid took Alonso. He won the league at Leverkusen. His next season wasn't great, but they went, no, we're going to go for him. And suddenly he's now struggling at Real Madrid. I feel as though some of these players, on the face of it, that were great players, aren't given enough time to bed into their jobs and they don't get enough managerial experience. So Frank now at Coventry, okay, it's in the Championship, but looks brilliant. And obviously he's got a real rapport with the fans. They love him. The players clearly love him. He's doing a fantastic job. He's definitely going to get them promoted. I cannot see them not coming up next season. And I feel as though they just need to be left to kind of just work on themselves. It takes a lot to be a good manager. Do you know what I mean? Like Jose Mourinho wasn't a manager when he was at Barcelona. He was Bobby Robson's assistant, and he was on the coaching staff. And he sat and he watched and he listened, and he would have been in every managerial press conference. He'd have been in every changing room. He'd have listened to every word Bobby Robson said, and he'd have gone, that is how I need to be. And there'll be tweaks along the way that he might have made, but he was listening in the background and taking it all in. And that is why Jose became the fantastic manager he was. Maybe in recent years, he's kind of dropped away slightly, but he was the new big thing. He was the new big hope, and he's won every bloody trophy you can possibly win, again, more than once. And I feel it's like managers like Cesc just need to be left to kind of develop a little bit more. That's my personal opinion. What I would say, just very, very briefly, does it scare you when the club have come out tonight or this morning and they said that we've already got our contingency plan is already in place? Don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. We know what we're doing. Because that scares the life out of me. Because I think to myself, well, if that was the case, you'd want like a Thomas Tuchel, you'd want an Ancelotti, you'd want someone of that ilk. Maybe not. Maybe it's a young manager that's at another club. So let's just say Alonso, whoever it might be, Nagelsmann from the German national team. What worries me is how can you have a contingency plan in place in January when anybody who's a good manager is already with another team? Now, unless they're going to go and buy somebody out, then fair enough. If you know, for example, you can go and get Arne Slot for Liverpool, for argument's sake, just throw a name out there, then fine. But I don't see how Chelsea are going to go and buy their way into a top manager. I just don't see it. We're picking, I feel like, from an empty barrel. It's the best way I can describe it. It's like put your name in the in your hand in a raffle. Oh, ticket number 25. Oh, that's Glasner. I don't feel like you can have a contingency plan that's not an interim. Do you know what I mean? Like to have a permanent manager in January, to me, makes no sense. That I can understand it if they went, we've got a contingency plan. It's going to be John Terry until the end of the season. I could see that. I could go, oh, fair enough, fair play. But Chelsea are doing too well in the league and in the cups for that to be the case. I think they wouldn't want to risk it with him. But equally, I just don't see how they can be so assured of themselves in January when when every good team has got their manager in place already. I just don't understand that quote at all.
I think that we probably might understand it in a couple of days because I think it depends on the appointment is, then that will become clear, right? So, for example, if it's Liam Rosenior, then it's like, well, they've already made the deal with themselves, so they've got that sorted. It's very easy. If it was Xavi, then he's out of work, so they've spoken to his agent, said if the position was come available, would you be interested? So it might depend. And then it could be someone like a Filipe Luís, who is in role, but again, they've gone to agents and said, let's understand the contract situation. Oh, okay, it would be 4 million to get you out. Would you be interested? Yes. So I think the appointment will tell us, but yeah, what the timing is interesting because I'm just looking at our fixtures for January. Almost haven't had a chance to look at these. I don't know if you have, because it's been so crazy getting all through the December ones. But I think the timing looks quite deliberate to me. So the new manager won't be in charge for Man City. That's a given, right? Man City away will be seen as a bit of a throwaway. And who knows, it would just like Chelsea to go up there and get something now with this situation, but who knows? After that, this new manager comes in, and let's assume the next game, which is Fulham away, is his first game of being in charge. So he's got Fulham away, Charlton away in the FA Cup, Arsenal at home in the League Cup, Brentford at home, Paphos at home, and then Palace away, all before the end of January. So he's basically coming into, 6 games, of which you'd say a good share of them on paper, and we've done this before on paper and we've got it very wrong, by the way, but are winnable games. Games like Brentford at home, Paphos at home will be seen as, and Charlton away, for example, these must-win games for Chelsea. And I wonder if they'll have looked at that and go, this is the right time to do it. Bring someone in and go, right, you never get a soft landing at a club like Chelsea, don't get me wrong. But if you are going to get a softer landing, then you've got plenty of home games and a couple of games like Paphos at home that should be a bit of a banker. So I wonder if that'll be a big part of the thinking, and then who knows where it goes from there, right? But it's going to be a very, very interesting few days to be a Chelsea fan, isn't it?
So you made me laugh there, because when you said Brentford at home, did you say?
Yeah.
So didn't they just go to Bournemouth and win 3-0? I'm sure they did.
Oh yeah, we'll lose to Brentford at home.
My point is, I know what you're saying. It's not Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool the next. I understand it, but the trouble with Chelsea is, like, we've seen it all before. These sorts of teams that hang around us just always get something off of us. We've drawn with Bournemouth twice. We've lost to bloody Brighton at home, and we drew in the last minute against Brentford this season already. Like, what is it with these Oxy teams? They actually drive me insane. But yeah, there's no easy games. But I know what you're saying. There's a few home games in there. There's a few winnable games in there, and like you say, it's the softest possible landing you probably have. You're probably right there.
Yeah, it's as soft as you're going to get without it being particularly soft, because it's Chelsea. But yeah, I think it is written, particularly if you take the League Cup against Arsenal as it's the League Cup and it's Arsenal, and you're like, the pressure is actually relatively off as it could be in a semi-final.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And actually, the next few games, you got West Ham at home in the league. You go to Wolves in the league, and then you got home to Leeds and home to Burnley. So there's plenty of home games actually in the mix as well. And Chelsea's home form has been
Really
pretty dismal, isn't it, this season in the Premier League? So right, we will, after this break, talk about where we've got to on the podcast. But yeah, in terms of the next manager, we'll obviously the next game will be Man City, and we'll be here straight after that. So we'll definitely be talking about probably the appointment and let you know what we think. And let us know. Do email in at hello@1905podcast.com with who you'd like to see. We'd love to hear it. And yeah, we reply to every single email. So do let us know what you think. Right, join us after the break. We'll talk about hitting 100. So Joe, in the summer of 2024, we got to a habit of voice noting each other all the time, talking about Chelsea. And this was around the time of Pochettino leaving the club, wasn't it? It was kind of that era, and we were back and forth all the time, and our voice notes were getting kind of longer and longer. It would be 5-10 minutes often, talking about the situation, what we thought. We'd reply back, and I can't even remember which one of us messaged each other at this point, but one of us said, "Oh, I quite enjoy these. It's almost like a listen to a little podcast, like while we're at work or while we're going to the gym or whatever." And then we fired over the idea. I was like, should we give it a go? Should we turn this into a podcast? And here we are, 100 episodes later, and I would say, from my perspective, enjoying it now more than ever, and it just gets more and more fun, more enjoyable. How have you found the experience of doing the podcast, and what's been your highlights?
Well, firstly, I think it was both of us, to be honest with you. Like you say, with the whole messaging back and forth with the slightly longer ones that were 5 minutes and 10 minutes long. I think, well, it's like a little podcast in itself. And I think we felt as though we covered a lot of topics in that time. There was a lot more humour. There was a lot more swearing, particularly from me. So I don't swear as much as I do on the previous notes to you personally. But no, I found it incredible. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how to go. Well, we knew how to go about it, but it was more a case of, are we going to find the time to do it? After matches, are we going to be able to, with our families and our other sort of work and football commitments ourselves, we'll be able to give it enough of our time to make it sound interesting, to make it sound good. And I think, without blowing our own trumpet, I think we've done that. I think from the messages we receive from people via email and Instagram and other sources as well, people in the street, people that friends of ours that didn't listen and they now do, everybody has been so complimentary. And I think they can sense that everything we do comes from the heart. It comes from a place of knowledge. It comes from a place of supporting the club since our dads supported the club, which was forever, basically. And you can't know what we know without going to football when you were like 4 and 5, like we were. And I think that is it's in you for any fan of any club. If you support that team from a very, very young age, you're just bound into the brickwork of the club. And I think that what we did and tried to set out to do was give a balanced, honest, not overreactionary podcast. And like I said the other day, it's okay to be annoyed if your team lose to a side that you shouldn't have lost to. It's okay to spend 5 minutes going, that was crap, and I'm actually annoyed about that. But then come back the next day and say, look, okay, yeah, it was this, but I can see why we lost now, or that player was injured, referee was poor on the day. You can find reasons why you didn't win a match. But I think we don't dwell on stuff too long. We move on to the next match. And I think it's been an absolute godsend for me. I love doing it. I know you love doing it. I think it's given us a real outlet to put this stuff, because a lot of the time I would just moan at my wife. I would just sit there moaning and cursing and stressing and kicking things in the living room. And this now at least gives me somewhere. I go for a walk, I do my voice notes, so I can let my frustrations go, and I can come back into the real world and be like, I'm going to go and play with my kids now. And I think that for me has been a real highlight, that I can kind of put the football to one side, because Chelsea gets into my blood. You know, it really boils my blood. It boils it to the point where I just want to just hurt things, you know. You kind of go, I'm just so annoyed today. And I think the idea of having a way of, or having somewhere to put it, has been fantastic for me. So I think that's probably my biggest highlight, is that.
Yeah, it's so true. I think when we started doing it, obviously that's where the voice note idea came from, and we felt like we obviously don't do formats like this very often with a conversation, which is a much more typical, the typical podcast format, I guess. And I think in doing the style that we did, we felt that it would be a little bit different, a bit unique. I've kind of said to you, it's almost like people said to us, they're almost like mini monologues or little soapboxes in terms of opinions and stuff. But what I think you really get, hopefully comes across to you guys listening, is you do get that the first glance, that first message straight after the final whistle is a real emotional, what it is to be a football fan kind of voice note. And I always go back to, I remember the one that I did after Chelsea beat Fulham 2-1 at Craven Cottage, last minute goal from Pedro Neto, wasn't it, to really keep us in the race for top 4 or for Champions League places last season. And I started the voice note about 5 seconds after having sprinted around the garden with my kids, playing One Step Beyond, going absolutely wild, and then came back in and was quite almost emotional actually about the fact that Chelsea kept our season alive. And I feel like you kind of get that high and low emotion across very, very clearly. The other side of the coin maybe be, I think one of the ones that really sticks out from you, Joe, was the emotion in the other way when we lost to Brighton for the second time in a week. And it was just absolutely dismal last season. So you get that kind of, what I think, what it is to be a football fan, whoever you support, emotion. And then obviously we'll often come back the next day and you are a bit more reflective and we can talk a bit more about how we feel the game went. But I just love doing it. Like you say, and nothing means more to us, honestly, than when we get the correspondence from people listening, whether that is via email or on Instagram or reviews on Spotify and Apple. And honestly, every single time we get one, I immediately screenshot it and send it to Joe, and then we always reply back, because it's sometimes you feel like is anyone listening? But you see the numbers and you see when people reply back that it really means a lot. So yeah, thank you to everyone for the support. And the biggest thing you can do for us is to get in touch, to give us those 5-star reviews, and just to tell a friend if you've got a WhatsApp group with anyone who's a Chelsea fan, just to tell them about the show. And we've done 100. We're not going anywhere. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 and see how we feel then. Final word, Joe?
I was going to say, as the Wolf of Wall Street said, I'm not leaving. No, it's been brilliant, mate. And obviously all your time that you put into it, putting it all together. I know we changed the format slightly. We we'll probably over time we will change it and tweak it because it's nice to give the listeners something different to listen to. Obviously, at the moment in our lives, the way we do sometimes the slightly longer voice notes, that helps us to get the pod out in a good, swift time for people to listen to. Because I know after a game, particularly say we've lost or drawn, I don't mind listening to that. I will always listen to it. But maybe will I listen to it 4 days' time? Probably not. So we try to get things out nice and sharp for people. We always aim to do that. It's not easy. Chris has to go on and actually put all this together. And it does take a lot of our day. But I think, like we both said, it's given us that freedom and that somewhere to put our voice and speak on behalf of quite a few people that are very like-minded like us. And I think Chelsea fans that I speak to and know are very much like me and like Chris. And from the emails that we get in, we are very much on a par with how you feel as well. And I don't think a lot of Chelsea fans get the chance to air their views or air their grievances with certain things. And I think we've given people a bit of a chance, even if they just email us and they get something off their chest. Do you know, it makes you feel so much better. And I think that by doing this podcast and having somewhere for people to speak is a brilliant thing. And the more that people talk, as we will know with mental health and stuff, it's the best thing to do. So please get in contact whenever you can. If you want to speak to us, then we always reply.
Said. Really well said. Well, we'll finish there. As you said, it feels kind of appropriate that episode 1 was Maresca's appointment. Episode 100 is his departure. We'll be back after the Man City game to reflect on that game and probably give you our opinions on the new Chelsea boss. And Joe, do you want to send us out with our favourite line? Because it feels it's got to be true at this point on the first day of the new year.
Every little thing is going to be all right.
Nice one. See you next time, guys. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.